was an instant hit. Dead Space racked up over 2 million sales, nabbed a handful of awards, and spawned sequels in 2011 and 2013. And then, nothing. Here's why we never got to play Dead Space 4. Dead Space 3 didn't sell. In an interview with CVG, former Electronic Arts president Frank Gibeau said, "Ultimately, you need to get audience sizes of around 5 million to really continue to invest in an IP like Dead Space." Sadly, Dead Space 3 didn't sell anywhere close to 5 million copies. In its first week of release, Dead Space 2 shipped nearly 2 million copies. By contrast, Dead Space 3 moved only 605,000 units. That was well below EA's initial estimates, and the game's failure contributed to EA's year-over-year revenue loss of over $150 million in 2013, likely making it difficult to justify a sequel. Critics were critical. According to the review aggregator Metacritic, the first two Dead Space games received average review scores of 89 and 90% respectively for their Xbox 360 versions. Dead Space 3, on the other hand, only scored a 78. While this is still slightly above average for video games, it was a disappointment for the franchise, with critics knocking the title's move away from survival horror towards more generic action. Mediocre reviews and tepid word of mouth from players may help explain why sales died an unspeakably brutal death. Survival horror is changing. Despite some innovative features, the first two Dead Space games are very much traditional survival horror titles. Most of Dead Space's tension comes from navigating the game's harsh and violent environments with limited resources, while some strategically placed gore and a smattering of haunted house-style jump scares round everything out. But a lot has changed since the first Dead Space came out. In 2014, a playable trailer called PT took the gaming world by storm with its haunting, surreal imagery and shifting geography. The game PT promoted, a Silent Hill reboot by Hideo Kojima and acclaimed film director Guillermo del Toro, never materialized, but the trailer was enough to galvanize the survival horror genre. With games moving towards psychological horror, Dead Space's action formula was beginning to look, well, dated. The stars have moved on. Glenn Schofield, who created Dead Space, left Visceral and Electronic Arts in 2009 to form his own company, Sledgehammer Games. Wright Bagwell, lead gameplay designer on Dead Space and creative director on Dead Space 2, joined Zynga in 2011, where he led the design team on Farmville 2. And Steve Paputsits, Visceral's vice president and general manager and the lead executive on all of the Dead Space games, departed the company in 2015. In other words, the people who made the franchise great in the first place have left. Star Wars. Inspired by Dead Space's popularity, Electronic Arts and DICE handed Visceral the reins for the shoot-'em-up Battlefield Hardline. And from there, Visceral's main office went straight to work on an ambitious and mysterious Star Wars title, overseen by Uncharted's Amy Hennig. That's exciting news for fans of both Star Wars and Visceral, but it doesn't leave much time for Dead Space. Visceral's booked for the next few years, and if there's going to be more Dead Space, it'll have to wait until Visceral returns from its trip to a galaxy far, far away. Or farther away than their usual one.
I hate to break it to you losers, but Han Solo's a bitch.
It lost its way. The first two Dead Space games are conscious throwbacks to movies like Alien, with the schlubby Isaac forced to fight his way alone through infested, confined spaces. But Dead Space 3 is different. In a conscious attempt to reach a wider audience, Electronic Arts added co-op multiplayer to the main campaign, and a stereotypically grizzled soldier buddy named John Carver. The tight claustrophobic levels are replaced by snowfields and wide-open space, allowing a suddenly more nimble Isaac to simply dodge out of the way of danger and duck effortlessly behind protective cover. In other words, the series lost what made it special. Getting it back will be no easy feat. A reboot makes more sense. Visceral's Star Wars game is still a number of years away, and that doesn't count extra time that the studio will spend on post-launch downloadable content and a potential sequel. By that point, it will have been well over a half-decade since the last Dead Space game hit consoles. Even with the tacked-on cliffhanger ending from the DLC, it might make more sense for the company to reboot the franchise with a new direction and new characters, rather than continue with something that was no longer working. It could be that Dead Space is officially dead. But if the series is anything like its necromorph monsters, it will come back to life before long. On second thought, maybe it shouldn't. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.